I do not have a slideshow, so you'll just have to listen to me. Thank you, Enrique and Sanitation, for hosting this really important symposium today. It's really great to have such a diverse group of stakeholders in the room discussing this really important issue. So at the expense of, I'm going to try to not repeat what has already been said today, but just to give a little bit of background on my boss and why this issue is near and dear to him. Dating back to his time, in the state legislature, he's been seeking out ways to manage the amount of plastic going out into our waterways and into our waste stream. He passed AB 258, which some of you might be aware of, which was kind of one of the original source reduction bills, preventing pre-production pellets from entering the waterways, understanding that the Clean Water Act couldn't address the pellets that were smaller than 5 millimeters. So fast forward to 2020, a lot has changed, and it's really inspiring to see how people have kind of have an awakening around the fact that we can't just solely rely on recycling, and that there needs to be more done in terms of source reduction. And I think that the China National Sword Policy has played a big role in that as well. So starting with a little bit, backing up a little bit to the problem that we're facing, and I know Andy spent a long time talking about this in the broader scheme of climate change, but I'm going to talk about it more locally. So, obviously there are huge environmental impacts that as policymakers we're responsible for dealing with because they directly impact our constituents. Most notably, there's the marine impacts. There's the plastic that's going out into the ocean, into our waterways. We have to deal with compliance with the Clean Water Act. We also have to pay millions of dollars every year in cleaning up our beaches and our rivers. So just one number, LA County actually spends $18 million per year in litter prevention and education and cleanups. The state of California spends $420 million per year in this. So this is not cheap, and our taxpayers are brunting the cost of our consumer throwaway culture. In addition to that, there's the fossil fuel impacts. A lot of times people think of plastic just in terms of litter, but plastic is also, just totally interconnected with fossil fuels, and in fact, it makes up 4% of our global yield of fossil fuels currently, and it's expected to triple by 2050, which would make plastic production will triple by 2050, meaning that by that time, if we don't do anything now, plastic production will make up 20% of our fossil fuel production. That's a really large percentage. So there's also health impacts. There has been microplastics found in fish, microplastics found in water. BPA and polystyrene have been found to potentially be carcinogenic. So these are things that we do not want to be consuming as human beings. And as this is a policy level perspective. Once again, as an elected official, this is something that we must address. We cannot be poisoning the food and the water that our constituents are consuming. So a couple of other numbers are that, so although, as Rebecca mentioned, plastic is underrepresented in our waste stream because it's measured by tonnage instead of by count, you'll see that it's overrepresented in what we're finding on the beach. So 7 out of 10 products that you find on the beach are going to be plastic materials, and 4 of those are going to be food serviceware. So clearly, plastic is a huge issue. So moving towards now today with the China National Sword Policy, Enrique did a really great job talking about why that has disrupted the state of recycling in California. We had like 62% of California waste was being exported to China, and now there was one MRF that has now only exporting 1% of their waste when originally they were doing 98% of it to China. So clearly it has flipped upside down, and the numbers show that in the fact that we're now paying $10 million to process waste that we were originally making $4 million off of. And this is also represented in the Recycla program too. Because as we know, and the haulers in the room can attest to this, we're having to increase the rates of Recycla to deal with the increased cost of recycling. And those rates, they're not the recycler providers are not crying wolf on this. Like, it is a lot more expensive to recycle. But the thing is that the current system puts this on the back of ratepayers, and we need to rethink this because we are not going to be able to build the infrastructure and the facilities necessary just off of what ratepayers are paying. So we have to, this has to be a multi-pronged approach with city investment, ratepayers, but also less plastic going into our waste stream to begin with. So moving towards some of the solutions. So we have, as Rebecca mentioned, there's a lot going on right now, both at the federal, state, and county and city levels. So we have the state bill, Ben Allen and Gonzalez, that has become a 2-year bill. And then we have the ballot measure that Recology is working on, which I'm personally pretty excited about because it will, that's a perfect example of a way that we can generate revenue to help build these facilities that doesn't rely solely on ratepayers or on people paying for plastic bags at the grocery store. And we also have the county, who has introduced their own motion to look into this, and that was actually a collaborative effort between the county and the mayor's office and CD2 and CD5. You know, because we wanted to make sure that if we're going to be talking about a source reduction policy, we need to really look at all plastics at the same time. We don't have the time or the money to really be doing these one-off bans on straws or polystyrene. We really need to be studying all of this and using the data to determine which products are the most problematic, and then using that to come up with a policy that tries to phase out those materials. So what I will also say, too, is that Los Angeles, although we're the most local of governments in that chain that I just mentioned, we really have an opportunity here to lead the way, and I think you've seen with the plastic bag bill that the Los Angeles was the first to come out on that, and the state bill, not by coincidence, looks pretty much identical to the one that we passed. And that is because Los Angeles, being such a big city, really has the potential to set the stage for what any like major plastics bill looks like that ultimately gets passed at the state. And we know that even if something does get passed, like Allen and Gonzalez's bill or a ballot measure, there's still going to be a multi-year process of rules and regulations being created by Cal Recycle. And being a city government, we have the opportunity to get something done at a quicker speed and once again send a really strong message. So source reduction is something that we are obviously very focused on, but we have to be careful to design the policy in a way that ensures that any alternatives that are used in replacement of plastic, that they have a lower life cycle impact than the plastic materials that we're phasing out. So as Rebecca mentioned, we have to be really careful to define what is compostable and to not be swayed by greenwashing of bioplastics and other things that are not actually much better than the plastics that we're currently using. So there's some promising data out there that, you know, like 100% fiber-based is a good alternative. However, this is also going to need to be done in concert with strategic planning around the composting facilities, because we also need to have the adequate infrastructure in place to be able to handle these alternatives. So it's not going to be, you know, we're just going to ban plastics. It has to be done very, very strategically. Another thing that Rebecca mentioned is the blue bin materials, and I think that this is so important to be more realistic about what's actually getting recycled, not only because it creates a better product on the back end, but also because I think it will do, and my boss has said this too, that it will do so much to change consumer behavior. Because if, as a consumer, if I believe that the plastic film packaging that I'm buying is getting recycled, I'm going to feel less bad about purchasing it. And because I'm just throwing it in the blue bin and it's out of sight, out of mind, and I'm doing my good duty for the day. But if we are able to limit the items in the blue bin to what MRFs are actually able to find a market for, I think that it will do wonders for saving recycling and to also change consumer behavior as well. And on that note about what is currently being recycled and what's not, it's, the state of recycling is pretty bleak right now in terms of really only the ones and twos have a market in LA County, and currently no food serviceware is commonly plastic food serviceware is commonly recycled in LA County, which is actually really shocking to me. But it just shows you that any of the forks and the knives and the plastic plates, there's no market for it, and part of that is because of China National Store, but also because of the contamination. So clearly, a lot needs to be done on that front. The other thing I wanted to mention is promoting local markets for recycling. So Andy spoke about this green sward and textile manufacturing. Rebecca mentioned it too. Something that my boss is also looking at is figuring out a way to provide local a revolving loan program for businesses that find ways to use waste stream from the city and make it into a marketable material. So the state currently offers several programs through the RMDZ program, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, but we're thinking that as a city, there might be a way for us to augment these programs while also making it an economic development driver. So that's another policy that we are looking at. And then we are also looking at procurement because the city is a huge buyer of products, and we want to make sure that our $4 billion spend, that we are doing it on products that are not exacerbating the climate crisis. So we currently have an environmentally preferred purchasing program in place, but it's currently not being followed by all of our departments. And that's not to their fault. It's just a program that has aged over the years and needs to be updated. So Andy and I are looking at ways we can update this program and make it more of a hard mandate to follow these procurement specifications. And I think that this also, in an indirect way, will hopefully help to promote markets for recycling, because as a city, we're such a large buyer, we're going to be purchasing products that have recycled content, that this will hopefully drive the market for producers to continue to be producing more environmentally beneficial products. And then finally, I would say that we also need to revise our solid waste integrated management plan. So the county is looking at this right now with their update to their plan, and I think this is something that the mayor's office has also been talking about. But I do believe that this is like a hard, I guess this is like a, what's the word? A hard truth is that we have relied, I think, too heavily on recycling to get us to our diversion goals. And if we're going to meet 90% diversion, I think we need to take a look at our practices that we're engaging in and maybe divert some of what we were planning to use recycling to get rid of our trash and do that in other ways, such as organics, but also in potentially gasification or pyrolysis and things that maybe aren't as popular to talk about, but we should be thinking about, because even if, let's say, there was a 100% recycling rate for everything, we would still it would still not be recycled on a one-to-one basis. So either way, recycling really can't be the answer to our problems, and I think that we need to take a broader look at all of our options on the table if the ultimate goal is to keep trash out of waters, keep it out of the rivers, and keep it out of our landfills. So thank you all so much.